Okay, welcome back to another edition of the Pat Dooley Show. Certainly, we've got some football to talk about. After so much building up, we actually have games we can talk about. We'll have a panel discussion a little bit later. Mark Long from the Associated Press, Jeff Cardozo, who does radio and TV in the area, will join me, and we look forward to that. Don't forget, if you want to hear my radio show, Jeff, of course, does his radio show. We used to do one together. But I'm doing a podcast, basically a 30-minute radio show once a week. You can click on. You can go on iTunes and get it, or you can go on Gatorsports.com and get it. Opening day was not, I think, what a lot of people hoped it would be. I think people thought we were going to see this great offense and this throwing the ball all over the field, and certainly some things that did not go well left a sour taste. As I was walking out, I mentioned this in the Swampcast. A fan grabbed me and said, "Hey, when they said the quarterbacks were neck and neck, I thought that was a good thing." It turned out maybe it wasn't. But certainly I don't think quarterback play was the biggest problem there. I think the fact that the offensive line didn't look good early when it got going a little bit. They ran it too much on 3rd and 1. We know what Will said after the game. I don't think they wanted to show Texas A&M anything. I think it'll be a different offense this week. Will it be better? Will it be good? That remains to be seen. But certainly when you have 14 penalties in your first game, 10 in the first half, that's ridiculous. That's the sign of a team that's not disciplined. It's the sign of a team that's not prepared. And that's the biggest thing that they've got. That should be their #1 priority. 100-something yards in penalties, that's a football field. You can't have that happening. And that's what happened last year. They were 89th in the country in penalties. They've got to get better. Muschamp keeps saying, well, we've exhausted everything we know. Well, clearly, it's not working. Find something that works one way or another. I know that when Jordan Reed had his second false start, they pulled him out of the game, and that's good. I think the bench has got to be your motivator there, but they've got to figure this out because it's getting to be embarrassing. Certainly, though, they got the win. It was getting a little uneasy there at the end of the half. Bowling Green's driving out, take the lead, and they get the Roberson interception. And again, it took no great skill to make that interception. The ball was tipped right into his gullet, and he made a nice little run back. But still, they didn't generate a lot of turnovers, didn't make a lot of things happen defensively. Very frustrating game for defenses to play when a team is trying to throws a lot of slants and quick passes and bubble screens. And maybe we'll see a little bit more of what that defense is supposed to be coming up, in the Texas A&M game. Texas A&M, we don't know much about what they're going to be offensively. We know what Kevin Sumlin did at Houston, and they like to run a lot of screens and traps like that and try to get the ball outside on the perimeter. But they've got a redshirt freshman quarterback, has never played in a game. Defensively, they weren't very good last year. Maybe they'll be better, but we don't know how good they're going to be. And again, without having a game on tape for Florida, they're not 100% sure what to do, what they're going to run. They can look at Texas A&M tape for personnel. They can look at Houston tape for what they've done in the past, but who knows? They've had really 2 weeks to game plan for Florida, so it'll be interesting to see how this game unfolds. Looking forward to going to College Station. Never been there. My good award goes to Jalen Watkins, Andre DeBose, and Mike Gillisley. I thought they all played well. I like the way Watkins played at corner. I think, and he was in there a lot of nickel. I think they're going to be decent in the secondary. I like their secondary in terms of their physicality. So we'll see how they play. But those guys I thought were the good. The bad, obviously, was anybody who committed a penalty. Anybody who committed a penalty, stop it right now. And it was great to see Caleb Sturgis get another 50-yard kick. But again, special teams were sloppy in this game. They got to clean that up. The protection on the last field goal that was, I don't know if it was tipped. No, Muschamp said it might have been, but it hit the upright. Was terrible. There was just some really bad special teams things there. So again, Florida's got a chance to clean up these things and go. I am a big believer in this game coming up. And my column for Saturday's paper, you can read it at Gatorsports.com, is going to be about how important this game is. This is a huge game. It's the biggest game in 2 years, in my opinion, at Florida. Now, Florida, South Carolina, with the East on the line in Urban Meyer's final year was a much bigger game. Didn't work out very well, but I think it's a huge game for Will Muschamp. And the bottom line is Florida really needs to go get a win. But we'll see. We'll see how much A&M not having an opener is going to affect them. Certainly, I think, and as I wrote Thursday, there's good and bad about that. But nobody knows for sure how they're going to respond. Are they going to come out and be a little nervous? Are they going to have to? Are they going to commit a bunch of penalties? We don't know about that. But it'll be an interesting Saturday, no question about it. 3:30 game. One reason it is the game that College Game Day is going to is it's a terrible schedule this week in college football. That game, Georgia, Missouri, is about it. There isn't much else out there. So not the greatest weekend, but we'll get to see College Station, see what it's all about, see what the 12th man, and see what the stadium is all about, and look forward to that. All right, we're going to take a little break here, and then we're going to come back with 3 things. Okay, it's time for 3 things, or tres cosas, as they say in Spanish. These are 3 things I think this week. Number 1, let's go ahead and get to these super conferences that we keep hearing about. You know, we keep talking about eventually it's going to be 16 team super conferences, and guess what? Every game will be good. After last week and seeing some of the opponents that teams were playing, and this week it's terrible again. College football is such a great sport, and it'd be so much better if we could see great games all day. If you're going to have games from Thursday to Monday night, let's have them all be good. And I don't care if it's a bottom team in Conference D against a top team in Conference A, it's still better than what we're seeing, you know, with Murray States of the world playing Florida State, for example. I'm not blaming Florida State. I'm not blaming Georgia for playing Buffalo. But I understand why they do it. I'm the one person I think that is not in favor of Florida going out and playing in Michigan and going home and home with them to start the season. I think that would be a mistake financially for the people in Gainesville, Florida, the people who own businesses here. But if we could just go ahead and get to these super conferences and make things a lot better. Number 2, Florida's quarterback battle is not over. I know Jeff Driscoll's been named the starter. It's his job. If he goes out and plays great, doesn't get hurt, he'll be the quarterback the whole way. But anybody who thinks that this thing is over, it's not. Jacoby Brissett could still be the quarterback at some point. Could be this week. Driscoll's got to play well. First of all, he's got to stay healthy, but he's got to play well. I mean, Florida's not going to just say, you're the guy, we're going to rise and sink with you. And when you heard what Will Muschamp said at the press conference the other day, and he said, somebody asked him about Brissett, and he goes, he's 1 snap away from being in the game. You know, even though Driscoll, don't look over your shoulder, but Brissett's 1 snap away from being in the game. I don't think the leash is going to be tiny, minuscule, but it's not going to be long either. So this quarterback battle is far from over. It's just over for who's going to start. And finally, number 3, Penn State's in real trouble. You know, they're losing to Ohio in the opener, even though some people were saying that Ohio could beat them. You know, you could just see, you watch them. I talked to somebody who was at the game, and he said, man, they looked slow from the start of the game, Penn State did. You take a team that wasn't very good to begin with, and Penn State was not. You take a team that wasn't very good, and then you take away some of its best players, including its best running back. You make them go through the ordeal that they had to deal with. None of this is their fault, but they've had to deal with all these questions and all this stuff going on. And then you say, by the way, for future recruiting classes, there'll be no bowl games. This is going to be ugly for a long time for Penn State. I had somebody today say they might not win a game. Now, I think they will win some games, but I would say 4-8 right now, as we sit here, maybe 3-9. It's not like it's going to get better next year. All right, that'll do it for 3 things. We'll be right back with our panel discussion. Mark Long and Jeff Cardozo are going to join me right after this. All right, welcome to our panel discussion. We're joined by Mark Long of the Associated Press, who's been covering the Gators for. How long have you been covering Florida?
Since 2004. Well, plus 4 years in college, yeah. So, yeah.
And Jeff Cardozo, who used to play for Florida, but not football. Just
like before I was born. That's a long time.
I covered Cardozo.
Oh, man. Now you're big time.
Yeah, yeah.
The way it is.
He's one of the do-it-all relievers.
Jeff Cardozo, of course, you know him from radio, PA, Gator Zone. How many jobs?
About 7 or 8 more. You got to do it quick.
Father, husband. Father, husband.
Corporation. It really is. We're all fathers, husbands.
That's right.
All right, we're going to go through these 5. Then we're going to start out with the first one, and it applies, of course, to the Florida Gators. And that is Mike Gillislee. We saw what he did Saturday, 148 yards, rushing, looked pretty good doing it. Over under 1,000 yards mark for the season for Gillislee.
I'll take the under. I just don't know. They're going to give him the ball 24, 25 times a game. Brent Pease said that today, and I just don't know that he's going to hold up. And then the other thing is, you got 13 games, so he's got to do it every week, and I just don't know. Given the SEC, once he gets into SEC play, I don't have a lot of faith about that offensive line.
You don't know that there's going to be 13 games, though.
No.
That could only be 12, right?
Yeah, okay.
I mean,
that would be a disaster.
If that team plays like it played Saturday, they're not going to any bowl game.
And that's where the one thing that scares me. I'll take the over just so I can be different. But just because they're going to give it to him so many times, and I'm still not convinced about this offensive line.
Right.
We talk about juniors and seniors and all these guys, and yeah, they had 148, 50 yards, whatever it was. But it's just, I think he'll hold up, and I like his moves and I like everything that he's done. And it was actually good to see a running back hit a defender and actually move forward as opposed to coming backwards. So there's signs there that he can be good, and I think what Will Musgrave's trying to do and establish a running game and be that type of offense that he'll get the 1,000.
Who's the last guy to hold up? Faison?
Faison.
I mean, that's what you're talking about. I mean,
C4.
Tebow got hurt.
Yeah.
Percy Harvin got hurt. Demps, Rainey. I'm going with the odds here. He's going to get hurt.
Well, and he also has got a hold on the ball. We saw him fumble the center, not a center exchange, but a running back exchange, and that's the kind of things he can't do. But I'm going to go with the over for this reason. I think they're going to force feed him so much.
No question.
And don't forget, he's got 2 easy games at the end of the season where you can get over 100 yards in 3 carries. He's got Kentucky's defense, which we saw the other day, isn't very good. But yeah, it's gonna be like 1,008. I don't think it's going to be 1,400 yards. But I agree with you. It was just nice to see a running back run over some people.
Yeah.
Number 2, is it an advantage or disadvantage for Florida that A&M's opener was wiped out? Of course, Isaac was heading that way, so they'll get a game. They're supposed to play Louisiana Tech. I thought that was going to be a tough game for them because La Tech's really good this year. And the game was going to be in Shreveport. They canceled it, precautionary more than anything. And as a result, and I wrote a column about this, Florida didn't have film on them, but they haven't had that chance to go out and play. Which do you think, advantage or disadvantage?
I think that's where you can make arguments on both sides, but to me, if you see what Florida did in week 1, you see what Wisconsin did, and all these other teams across the country that just weren't sharp week 1. So I think A&M's going to have those issues as well. Of course, they'll be all jacked up, ready to go, first game, first SEC game days there, all this other stuff. So a lot of factors into that, but you can't tell me that with a freshman quarterback and a new offense and a new coach and just trying to get everything established that you're going to be that good throughout the entire game. And how many times, Mark and Pat, have we talked about where a team that really wasn't the SEC, even though A&M now is an SEC, just not knowing the speed and the physicality and different things. I don't know if Texas A&M realizes what they're in store for yet. So that's
and you hear it from coaches across the board at every school. The biggest difference is between week 1 and week 2.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, that's what they're supposed to have. They should have had. Week 1 gets wiped out, so this becomes their week 1, and you expect what we saw at Florida last week and Gainesville last week, you expect to see in College Station this week.
So 14 penalties for Texas A&M?
Quite possibly. 14 penalties, a couple turnovers.
Well, and the thing is, the advantage for Texas A&M is that they started game plan for Florida on Tuesday when the game was canceled last week, which means it's almost like a bowl for them. And secondly, the fact that Florida doesn't have any tape on them. Now they can go back and look at old Houston tape. But I think it's more, to me, is about Florida going against their defense, because defensively they will throw a lot of looks at you. And Driscoll still, this is really his first start as a college quarterback. He started last week's game at wide receiver. Last year he came in and certainly played some after Brantley got hurt, but this is his first start. So, going on the road, I mean, we have to remember that too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's huge.
But does A&M have enough, I guess, film on Driscoll? I mean, and you can say as vanilla as it was, he handed the ball off a gazillion times. We didn't see any throws down the field. Some of the different things that hopefully will be different going into there.
Well, and that's the thing is I think they did go very vanilla offensively. And Will talked about how he force-fed the running game when it was just silly to do it. They wouldn't do it again this year or this week, hopefully. Number 3, the worst opening weekend. Would it be the Houston Cougars, the Pittsburgh Panthers, or Penn State Nittany Lions, Mark?
It's toss-up for sure, but I'll go with Penn State. Listen, when you look at that university, that school, the fans, the program, everything they've gone through over the last year, and they're looking for one piece of positive news. One game, one opener, give me something. That's what those fans are thinking, to change things, change the tenor of this program, and they didn't get it. They lost, and the second half was just abysmal.
They were awful.
And, so all of a sudden you just wonder where they go from here, because, if you didn't think it could get any worse, it just got worse.
Well, and that's the thing, is they came out and they looked pretty good in the first half, and you're like, okay, they're going to take this energy, and then it was almost just like the wind went out of the sails, and they were like a pretty average football team after that. And I don't know how many games they're going to win this year. And think about this, okay? And this is what I was thinking about. I was talking to somebody about this today. They go and they lose that game to Ohio. it's not going to get better. They're not going to play easier teams. And then they're going to try to recruit to that with no bowl games. I said this when it was handed down 10 years before they were relevant again, and I'll stand by that.
You really question how long he can actually stay there and coach that team.
Yeah.
They're in trouble.
Have you ever seen a guy with a bigger cleft in his chin than Bill O'Brien? I mean, it's huge. It's like a Mississippi River.
And I'll say this, Pat, nobody's feeling sorry for that program. No one's going to feel sorry for that
I
program.
feel bad for the kids. I feel bad for the coach who took the job.
Yep.
I even feel a little bit bad for the fans. But the university, no.
Yep.
You caused this problem. What about you, Jeff? Worst weekend, Houston, Pitt, or Penn State?
Yeah, it's like Mark said, they were all awful. But I would go with Houston on that. To lose to a team and then obviously
They were 13-1 last year.
Yeah.
To be as good as they were offensively and just all over the place. And of course, we know what's going to happen maybe now at Texas A&M. But it's just their offensive coordinator now basically resigns after one game. Yeah, resigns. So it's just you can't do that. It's got to be totally downhill from that. How do you now all of a sudden go with somebody else and expect to do anything throughout the rest of the season? It's just very bad times there.
Well, for those of you who don't know, they lost to Texas State,
Yeah.
which is actually an up-and-coming program going to, what do you call it, football?
Wasn't that the program from Necessary Roughness or one of
That's
those?
what I thought, yeah.
One of those,
The Aardvarks, wasn't it?
Yeah, the Aardvarks. That's
Football
exactly right.
bowl substitution. I believe.
Yeah. At any rate, they're coached by Dennis Francione, who used to, of course, be at Alabama.
Yep.
But, the offensive coordinator resigned, but they were, in time of possession, was 41-14 or something like that, 42.
Yep.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. To me, it's like the defensive coordinator
should be gone.
but maybe he's tighter with the coach. But certainly, bad weekends for both. I'll take Pitt, losing to Youngstown State, and not even competitive against Youngstown State. That's the program your boy Todd Graham left behind there. Not a big fan of his. I guess he text messaged the players' condolences the way he text messaged them when he left. But I feel bad for them. They kind of have a raw deal there. But the other thing, going back to the Houston game, maybe Kevin Sumlin left the cover a little bare there. I mean, how bad must it? And again, they don't have Case Keenum anymore. But that's,
or maybe it speaks to how good
a coach
he really is, and
Yeah.
and that things could fall apart that quickly.
Absolutely. Okay, number 4, the road team most likely to win this weekend: Florida at Texas A&M, Georgia's at Missouri, the Mighty Canes at Kansas State. Jeffy, who do you got there?
I'm going to be the homer. I really think Florida can go up there and win. And I loved how A&M brought this billboard into Gainesville and talking smack and doing all this other stuff. I thought that was really cool. That's what it's all about.
They're not the cleanest SEC.
No, by far. No way. You got to get like a 4.0 now to get in. I probably wouldn't get into school now if you had to here.
I'm going to guess that Vandy's cleaner.
Probably.
And probably Kentucky is, considering their players. They must be.
And now, if you ask me the same question next week, I'm a little scared of going into Knoxville and trying to win there after what they were able to do. But I just think with all the factors and everything that's going on, a new coach and just first game and so many things going into that, and you've got to be so much better from, as Mark talked about, week 1 to week 2 and opening up the offense and doing all these different things. I'm pretty confident Florida can go there and win.
Give me the team with the quarterback. Miami doesn't have a quarterback. Florida, I'm still not convinced they have a quarterback. Give me Georgia. They've got the quarterback. They've got the pass rush. They've got the running backs. I think Georgia's the most complete team of those three. I think Georgia goes into Missouri and wins.
Todd Gurley was certainly a great opening debut, running back a kick, running for 100 yards, and also Missouri talking smack.
Yes.
What's that about? It's old man football? Boy, you know that if Georgia whacks them around, they'll be on the sideline like with fake canes going, ah!
Exactly.
My question is, will Rick use that? He's just so nice a guy. I just don't know that. If it was Urban Meyer, you think he's going to get the most of that.
Oh, yeah.
I think Will Muschamp would get the most out of that. Steve Spurrier, certainly. I'm not sure Mark Rick gets the most out of
Maybe
that.
he'll have him dance in the end zone again.
There you go.
He's got a side.
He does it? Okay.
Yeah, I don't like Miami's chances at Kansas State, so I would go. I think I'm with you on Georgia there. Florida, I'm not giving up on Florida. A lot of people are ready to throw Muschamp to the wolves. Some of the emails I got were unbelievable. But I still think I'm not going to judge by the first game. I will judge by the second game.
And same way. You come on and you start giving me these phone calls that I've heard the last 2 days. Next week, when it looks the same, then I'm right with you. But
until
that happens.
That's the part about doing radio I really don't miss.
Sure.
Is that after a loss, like for a while, it's kind of keeps it going. And after a while, you're like, okay, I get it. Okay.
You're not happy.
He's not wearing the right shirt on the sideline. Okay. All right, finally for our panel, who do you like Saturday, Auburn or Mississippi State? The reason I put this game on there is I think this game is huge for both these teams. Auburn, 16-11 without Cam Newton under Gene Chizik. He loses this game, they're 16-12. People at some point are going to say, hey, that wasn't Chizik. That was Cam and Nick Fairley. And for Mississippi State, 2-6 in the conference last year, all that momentum and excitement that Dan Mullen's brought there is kind of starting to fade away. They need a good win, Jeff. Who do you like in that game?
I'm going to say the home team, Mississippi State. I think they get it done. Auburn, because of those numbers that you mentioned, I really think Cam won it that year. I mean, there's no question about it, how good that they were and had some good players, and Chizik just kind of ran into it and made it a really special season. But haven't been totally impressed with what he's been able to do. Clemson without Sammy Watkins is able to beat Auburn, and I think, as we know, ACC shouldn't be as good as SEC and different things that go on. So I think Mississippi State puts it together at home. The Cowboys will be loud and proud.
Well, and certainly Auburn's defense was awful last week.
Totally.
Van Gorder, who I've never been big on. I've never really thought he was that great a coordinator. Not getting it done. They gave up, what was it, 4 or something? Maybe it was 5 something. But anyway, he gave up a lot of yards and a lot of field goals, but they ended up losing the game. But, you know, Mississippi State don't really have a feel for them yet, what kind of team they're going to have this year.
No, you don't. But, and I agree. I actually agree that Mississippi State is the team here with more to lose. I think the shine is off of Dan Mullen. That 9-4 season seems like, you know, a decade ago right now. And, you know, the bowl wins and whatnot. And I think he's in a spot where, you know, the expectations, you know, he's almost his own worst enemy. The expectations got higher, raised the bar a little bit. And now all of a sudden he's failing to produce. And that's a bad scenario to be in. And a win here would certainly turn things around a little bit.
He should have jumped ship when he was
after 94
in command, because you can't compete against Alabama and LSU.
Who went after him? I didn't really ever get a feeling that.
I guess there was a couple schools that
somebody enough for them to pay him.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and the thing is, I think it's a bigger game for Chizik because, like I said, he hadn't done anything other than the Cam year, and for them to lose this game, and now they've still got Alabama, LSU, Arkansas on their schedule, and Georgia. There's 4 possible losses. So I think it's a huge game for Auburn and for Chizik. And for that reason, I tend to pick desperate coaches and desperate teams. Mississippi State, if they lose, okay, like I said, the shine's off. I agree with you, the shine's off Dan Mullen. But there's still time to recover. But I still think it's a huge game for them. That's going to do it for our panel. We appreciate Mark Long from the Associated Press. And of course, Jeff Cardozo from, what should I call you? Entrepreneur?
Sure.
Mr. Everything.
Mr. Everything. There we go.
Yeah, do it all.
Mr. Everything joining us here.
Brad Wilkerson reference for you.
There you go. We'll be right back with the list right after this. All right, now it's time for the list. I want to thank the panel for coming in. Great stuff from them as always. My list, I started to do the 5 coolest things about College Station, or the 5 things that you need to know about Texas A&M. I couldn't come up with them. So I was on Google all day. These aren't 5 interesting things about College Station. I think the most interesting thing is the guy from the newsroom actually is from there. Other than that, it's about it. So I ended up with this one, the 5 best second games in the modern era for Florida. And when I consider modern era, since I've been going to games, which is a long time. Number 1 was a 1990 game against Alabama. This was Steve Spurrier's second game ever, and he said for many years, and still says today, that game changed the mindset of this Florida program. It had been all about excuses and all about how we can't do things. This was like the we can type of game when they went to Tuscaloosa, won 17-13, and certainly a big win for the Gators. I don't think anybody realized at the time how big, but that was a huge game. It changed everything. Number 2, 1982, and a lot of people will say this is number 1. Florida beat Southern Cal 17-9 in the Swamp. One of the few times Florida played anybody in the first couple of games. And that, in fact, they did the next year. They went to Southern Cal and tied them. But that game, it's called the Wilbur Marshall game. He had like 17 tackles. 5 of them were sacks. They couldn't block him. It was 1,000 degrees. Charlie Pell led the team on a victory lap after the game, except for Wilbur because he was too tired. He stayed in the locker room. But certainly anybody who was there will never forget that game. Number 3 was 1993 Kentucky game. And I put this in here because even though Florida played one of its worst games ever against Kentucky, they win the game when famous Doring's got a touchdown. And I've thought many times, not only did Chris Doering's life change that day, but I think Florida football didn't change that day. They won that game against Kentucky despite throwing 7 interceptions. But you always wonder, if they lose to Kentucky in that game, is it the same? The Spurrier's confidence, is the team's confidence? You know, they went on and won the SEC that year. It's something we'll never know, but I think that was a huge win. Number 4, 1991, Alabama, Florida beat them here in the Swamp 35-0, shut them out. The famous thing about this game is there was a sports writer who quoted Spurrier as saying that he thought Florida would beat Alabama by 3 touchdowns when they played him later in the year. Spurrier denied it, said he never said it, wanted a retraction. Heard that one before. And then they beat him by 5 touchdowns. So it worked out pretty good. And finally, number 5, 1974. I'll never forget this game. Maryland down in Tampa. Maryland was very good then, ranked 14th. Florida, we didn't know for sure how good they were going to be. They were coming off another kind of average season under Doug Dickey. But they kept giving the ball to Tony Green on the draw play. They were running kind of a wishbone, but they ran a lot of draw plays with Tony Green that night. He had an unbelievable game. Florida beat Maryland 17-10. It's just a game that stuck out with me. It was my first year in college here at Florida, and I'll never forget that one. Those are the 5 best second game wins for Florida in the modern era. That's going to do it for another edition of the Pat Dooley Show. Thanks so much for clicking on. We'll be back with you next week after the Florida Texas A&M game. Talk about that game and, of course, talk about Florida, Tennessee. Until then, this is Pat Dooley, sports columnist of the Gainesville Sun, saying so long from the Sunshine State.